Now then, before we get to Damien Delaney, quick recap of the Premier League table after a busy couple of weeks. The headline act, Liverpool, are still in great shape, you would have to say. They are 6 points better off than Arsenal with a game in hand. So presuming they win that game against Everton, that would be 9-point lead. Maybe that's a big presumption, but still in really good shape. Both Liverpool and Arsenal drawing over the weekend. Yesterday, of course, at Anfield, it was 2-2 with Manchester United. On Saturday in the half-5 game, Brighton won, Arsenal won. They are missing Odegaard, Saka, Havertz, Sterling injured as well, so struggled a little bit, Arsenal. Chelsea have had a massive wobble. 0-0 with Everton, beaten by Fulham, beaten by Ipswich, and then Saturday a draw with Crystal Palace. That's their run, so they have dropped right off the pace, back to fourth spot. Spurs are not entertained. 2-1 loss at home to Newcastle. They are down to 12th. Newcastle looking very good, just a point off fourth. Man City winning again, albeit not super impressively, despite scoreline 4-1 win at home to West Ham. Villa, 2-1 winners against Leicester. This is turning tricky for Ruud van Nistelrooy. 5 defeats in a row. He got off to a very good start. He won a game, drew a game. Since then, 5 defeats in a row for Leicester and van Nistelrooy. The post-Russell Martin era for Southampton, not good. 5-0 defeat to Brentford at home. And then yesterday, Sammy Smodics amongst the goals for Ipswich, who drew 2-2 with Fulham. Let's talk to Damien. Now, it's been a while. Damien Delaney, hello.
Morning, Joe. How are you?
Very good. Sort of picturing you with your putter in your hand, looking out the window with a sad face.
Forlorn is the word you're looking for. Forlorn, look on my face. Yeah. Fortunately, my driving range is open, and I have become adept at utilising TrackMan.
I'll bet.
Which is something that I'm not really in the whole pile interested in. But once you discover the world of games that are available, I don't have TrackMan. The club I'm at has TrackMan, so I just played TrackMan for the last week, essentially just playing games, bullseye, targets. It's quite addictive, to be honest. Yeah.
So it will be installed at your house. What, end of the month?
No, I would. No. I'm a social person. I don't have. I always felt that I never get stuff in your house that would keep you in your house. I think life is to be going out, and I think if you got a facility like that at your house, or people put gyms in their houses or whatever else, these are things that lock you away. I think life is to be lived outside. So I like going to the range. You meet people, you chat, you hit balls. There's some social interaction. Are we recording here, or is this a chat?
No, we're on.
Are we on?
These are pearls of wisdom for the people. I wasn't
sure if I was talking there. I was thinking, is this just me and you talking, or are we actually on? So anyway,
that's a beautiful thing. I have a natural inclination towards can I just do that in my house and not talk to people, which is actually not the best thing to do. You're so much better off getting out and talking to people. So
no, that's my worst nightmare, to be honest with you. That is why some people, speaking to people like working from home and stuff, that'd be my worst nightmare. Getting up and going to the office.
You've more demons in your head to contend with. You don't want time on your own.
Probably not. You're probably right there, Joe. Yeah.
Okay. Well, will we park?
We'll have a real start now.
Yeah. Where will I jump in on this? Okay, yeah. Who are you more annoyed at if you're playing for Manchester United yesterday? Xerxes for the pass or Maguire for the finish?
Neither really. I mean, it was an opportunity. Both, I suppose, really. But I mean, Maguire's, that's not his forte. You know what I mean? He doesn't spend hours after training practicing those things. Normally us defenders are done and dusted and are having a shower about when centre forwards and attackers are out doing those cutback drills and whatever else have you. So no one really. It was an opportunity. It was gilt-edged. It would have been an amazing win for Manchester United. But there was still an awful lot of positives to take from it.
I was in the Maguire has no case to answer almost camp. It's all on Xerxes. There's no excuse for him to bobble that ball towards him.
Yeah, that's true. And even though in the first half, the Diallo cross where Dalot cross and Diallo got ahead of it, and he almost headed it back towards the D. That ball was phased. It could have been played on the ground, which would have been an awful lot easier. I think the lads in commentary said it was a great ball. I didn't think it was an amazing ball. As an attacker, you're busting a gut to get in the back post, and there's just so much swerve on the ball. But that ball could have been fizzed on the deck, which would have given Diallo an awful lot more room for error in terms of readjusting his body. As soon as it comes in head height, he's got nothing, even a fraction, half an inch behind him, and he's not getting good contact on it. Whereas at least if it's on the ground or knee height even, you can throw your left leg out and hook it. So both were amazing opportunities, and just tiny little thing, but it happens in life, you know.
Yeah. One more specific for you, and then we'll go bigger picture. Matthias de Ligt obviously getting criticism for sliding as Gakpo checked back inside for the finish. But you've been in that position, I'm sure. Was that a crazy thing to do, or is he entitled to think, well, I'm absolutely going to stop a dangerous cross and the box is so crowded, I'm entitled to think there'll be reinforcements on the way, so I'm going to send him back inside and then someone's going to catch him? Or was it just the wrong thing to do on De Ligt's part?
Yeah, complicated one that. I can see why De Ligt is probably in a frenzy because he wants to keep a goal out and you're trying your hardest. Ultimately, if he was in a good starting position, he could have just moved his feet and stopped the cross and be ready for the cutback. But ultimately, he felt that there was such a window there for Gakpo to cross it that he was going to fizz it. So he just basically went all in with not a whole pile else. It wasn't the most amazing of decision. See, if he doesn't slide like that, and I say Gakpo whips that one into that little corridor, and someone taps in the back post, you could possibly accuse De Ligt of, a bit more effort, desire, kill yourself to stop that cross. So it was a difficult one. He was caught out of position and he was working hard to get back, and he probably felt that's definitely, with the window that Gakpo had, you probably felt that's definitely getting fizzed across the 6-yard box, hence the reason he went all in. It's just a judgment call. It's a high risk decision. Unfortunately, as a defender, you have to make these decisions. I wouldn't criticise him for it too much. He was trying his best to stop a cross. It wasn't a lazy one, because I'm pretty sure we're going to get into lazy defending in this programme, Joe. So De Ligt is an honest mistake.
Okay.
He was really trying his hardest to stop the cross. As I said, if he had a better starting position or if he was in a better position, then he would have been able to work his feet a bit better, because he does do that. I watch him defending. He does move his feet and defend really well. It was just the frenzy of the moment got to him. But I wouldn't criticise someone for that.
Okay, that's fair. How's he doing generally?
I think I like him. I think he's quite good. I think he's been a good addition. I'm not sure how much money they ended up paying for him in the end, but I think he's been a good addition. He's mobile, he's capable, he's comfortable on the ball, he's durable. So yeah, I think he's been a reasonable addition to Manchester United. Yeah.
So let's go bigger picture then. The game itself, what do you make of it?
Stunning game. Enthralled. Just really enjoyed it. The game justified the hype. You have to give credit to Manchester United for what they did, the way they came, they set up, they did exactly what they needed to do, delivered the exact performance that they needed to, especially on the back of the Newcastle game. So they deserve a huge amount of credit, and the players do as well. And Liverpool, I was slightly disappointed in Liverpool. I suppose from a Liverpool point of view, the one difference I've probably noticed with Arne Slot and Jurgen Klopp is Liverpool seem to be an awful lot more patient with Arne Slot. There's an awful lot more composure in their play, and they're faced with a lot of low blocks, and they do tend to retain possession and wait for the openings. And when they actually went 2-1 up, Liverpool, after the penalty, I was thinking to myself, geez, it's been a really mature performance from Liverpool, this, in the face with a compact, tough, hard to break down Manchester United team who were counter-attacking really well, but they showed real composure. I felt, and if that game would have finished 2-1, I think Liverpool probably would have had a lot of credit for handling the occasion really, really well. It was just obviously the result taints that. In hindsight, you probably think, could Liverpool have given more? They probably could have. They probably could have played at a bit of a quicker pace, a better pace, worked Manchester United a little bit harder. But there was a real composure to what they were doing until the second one went in. And then obviously when you draw 2-2, that changes the complexion completely.
I mean, you couldn't really be critical of Liverpool in broad terms, obviously. But yesterday, I was kind of disappointed with them. Especially off the back of Newcastle, who and I know it was against a different Manchester United team, which we'll come to in a moment, but just showed how Manchester United can't live with physicality in the main, and we've talked about that before. I just thought it was a very kind of slow and steady and meandering start, as opposed to, we're at Anfield, let's give them a little bit of the Jurgen Klopp stuff for the first 15 minutes and see how they handle that. I just thought it was a little bit kind of one-paced.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we probably will get onto this, but there was big differences between Newcastle's performance, the performance against Newcastle from Manchester United, and the performance what they did against Liverpool. There was an awful lot more respect in terms of, they realised where they were. It was a mid to low block, very, very compact. Nobody was left exposed. The players really got back into good defensive positions. And I suppose, there's an awful lot to cover here. So nobody was really left exposed. So those gaps that Newcastle found weren't really there. Yes, the team was different with Ugarte and Diallo. And I think that's going to be a problem for Manchester United moving forward, as good and all as yesterday was. But that shape and the way they played was pretty conservative. You know, it was nice and compact and mid to low block and very, very diligent, and everybody had bodies around them and nobody was left on their own to get run off. It was a very disciplined performance from Manchester United, and that's why it was exactly what they needed to do. It's not a criticism. I think it was brilliant from Manchester United what they did. So Liverpool were faced with this low block and they probably just thought, no, we're going to retain possession here. We're going to work it. We're going to stay compact ourselves. We're not going to give Manchester United the opportunity to counter on us, even though they were. Whereas I suppose if you get into a swinging match, that game could fall apart very quickly for Liverpool and our Manchester United. So that's why I say I thought it was a very composed performance from Liverpool. It wasn't an amazing performance, but I thought there was an element of composure in what they were doing. And if they'd got that over the line at 2-1, I think I'd be sitting here saying to you, I was really impressed with Liverpool's maturity. They were really good. They didn't get involved in anything. You know, they were faced with a low block and they retained the ball really well and they worked it well and they were patient and they got their chances. They knew the goals would come. Brilliant performance from Liverpool. But unfortunately, the equaliser just didn't shine off that.
Yeah. So, okay, I take your point that Manchester United almost set the terms of the game in many respects. If against Newcastle, that was something of a nadir under Amorim with Eriksen and Casemiro in midfield and everyone around them just abandoning ship and saying, well, you two take these oceans of space, which you're not comfortable in at the best of times, and good luck against, three of the best midfielders in the league. So here, to my eye anyway, and you can explain the intricacies, we had Ugarte and Mainu, who versus Eriksen and Casemiro are just a better starting two anyway, legs and mobility. But also the likes of Martinez, Maguire, they were coming into midfield at times to help them out. And then equally, Ahmed and Bruno, who were that two in front, they were often dropping back alongside them. So at times it was 4-5-1-ish in that mid to low block. So I'd say Casemiro and Eriksen were saying, well, bloody hell, if you'd done that, we might have been a bit better the other night. But that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. That's why, that 3-4-3 formation, when it gets kind of pinned in or it shows a level of respect to the opposition, it does become 5-4-1 very quickly. The likes of Bruno and Ahmad were dropping in and helping the two midfield players so they could now screen the back three. So Ugarte got to sit in front of the back three and screen them because the two wide players, Bruno and Diallo, were dropping in and helping with the midfield problem that they had. Whereas against Newcastle, Casemiro didn't know where to stick or twist. Every time he came out to press, Newcastle played around him. Every time he sat in, Bruno Guimaraes got on the ball and started running the show. So you're right, I think Casemiro was probably looking on the bench saying that, listen, if we'd played like this, we wouldn't have done that against Newcastle. But you can't play like that. That's kind of harking back to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer days of just counter-attacking and, sitting in deep and giving up large chunks of the game. And I suppose ultimately that's the problem that Amorim has now going forward, is that I think they've got a cup game coming up against Arsenal, and then their next two games are Southampton and Brighton. Do you approach the game in the same way? Do you go low block, low to mid block, compact? Yes, when Martinez stepped in to help midfield players, that's exactly what that system requires, which didn't happen in the Newcastle game. But I think Martinez feels an awful lot more comfortable stepping in, when Ugarte is nearby, when Dalot on the left-hand side is nearby. There isn't huge spaces. Like if Casemiro goes to press and then obviously Dalot goes to press high up the pitch, and all of a sudden Martinez is in a 30 by 30 area, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm really comfortable going and pressing, but I probably should, and now I'm getting caught in open space. Like even though they were stepping into midfield, there was no open spaces, right? So that's the beauty of being compact and narrow, is that if you make a mistake, most people, including myself, wouldn't even see it because somebody else would cover the space or somebody else would fill it. So when Martinez steps in, and all of a sudden the gap between Harry Maguire and Dalot at left wing back isn't huge, right? There's only maybe 25 yards. So if a ball does get spun into that channel, Harry Maguire can deal with it or Dalot can deal with it. It's when Ugarte's high up the pitch, it's when Dalot's high up the pitch, it's when Maguire is central, and all of a sudden that's a huge gap between Maguire and Dalot, and Martinez steps in and the ball gets spun into that area. It's very, very, now your decision making becomes difficult. So that's what I'm saying. When they play against Brighton, do they approach the game the same way? Will they show Brighton the same amount of respect?
Yeah.
Will they drop into a low block? Will they counter attack? I tell you, the fans will get pretty annoyed quickly if Brighton start dominating the game.
Yeah, that is a predicament, and that's where Solskjaer found himself as well. There was that very memorable game against Liverpool at Old Trafford, where he decided over the summer we're going to become a pressing team now, and it was disastrous. Amorim was interesting post game. He would have it wouldn't have been ridiculous for him to take some of the plaudits. The questions were generally very positive, and yet in effect what he said was, I'm really, really annoyed today because this is just basically crystallised for me the extent to which effort was not put in the previous games. So I'm kind of sitting here after this very good performance and I'm thinking Newcastle 2-0, Wolves 2-0, Bournemouth 3-0, what the hell's going on, And Bruno Fernandes was of a similar vein. That's kind of encouraging again. Like, Amorim does seem like a serious person. At the same time, the team he picked against Newcastle, that was also on him. So he's not blameless in this either. He can't just be like, well, the players showed attitude today and they haven't shown attitude at other times. Your read on the way he dealt with that performance?
I'd agree with him. I mean, there was an intensity to Manchester United yesterday that we haven't seen. But I suppose when you put Ugarte and Diallo and Bruno's as diligent as what he is out of possession, and he was dropping back in alongside and helping out the midfield players, all of a sudden now you had Mazraoui at right wing back and not Amad Diallo, who's a winger, who's not a great defender. So, it ended up being a flat back five for large portions of that game, which gave everybody an insulation and a comfort. I think that's why we've seen a resurgence in Harry Maguire being in the middle of that back three, is because he is typical of what he did when he was at England. Yeah. He was insulated in the back three, bodies around him, and when you condense the space that Harry has to work in, he's actually a pretty good defender. The problem is when you're on a high press or you're on a counter-attack, and we've seen with the results you just mentioned there against Newcastle, Wolves and Bournemouth, it's when Manchester United are attacking, the ball gets turned over, how quickly the opposition go from one end of the pitch to the other, because Harry Maguire can't cover the ground. That didn't happen so much yesterday against Liverpool because there was a discipline in what Manchester United did. Now, when you play Brighton next week or the week after, I think it's Southampton maybe next.
Southampton, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay, Southampton will be fine no matter what happens, you'd imagine. But it's when you play the likes of Brighton, when you play Newcastle again, or whoever it may be, and you have to come out, you have to attack, and then the ball gets turned over, and these teams are super slick on the break, super quick, mobile teams. Manchester United get caught out. But there was a discipline. I think that's probably what he was alluding to after the game, is that the discipline, the hard work, the willingness to get back in and help out the midfield, that's how that system works for him, and he probably felt he didn't see that in the other games.
It was amazing last 5 minutes of the match, and then very much post-match it became all about Trent Alexander-Arnold. That's the story, and we're going with it. And even, I don't know if you saw it, but Sky did a montage of Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville in the gantry for the goals on the way back in from an ad break before they were in studio. And like the one where Alexander-Arnold gives the ball away quite poorly, plays it into midfield, and United go on the counter-attack, you can see Carragher pointing at someone, I mean, 3 guesses, and saying, that's him. Yeah. And very much post-match, he was bringing in the Real Madrid bid for 20 million, which happened this week, and effectively was saying, that bid does not happen without the say-so of the Alexander-Arnold camp. And it was just, that isn't right on Alexander-Arnold's part. We'll deal with the transfer situation in a moment. What about his performance? Was he ranked terrible?
Yeah. There's no way of getting about it. That was as bad as I think he's played. That was as poor a game as I've seen him have. He looked disinterested almost, not because of the transfer. He just didn't look like he could get into the game at all. No, you could just write it off as it's a bad game. Didn't play well, and it is what it is. I think Liverpool have been very fortunate with this transfer situation with the 3 big players, and that's so far as that it's been all nice and rosy and everybody's comfortable with the situation. I fear now he's going to be scapegoated. He's going to be the man that's going to be, that's going to be the talking point moving forward. And the other 2 are probably happy about that because they get to go about their job. Trent Alexander-Arnold is an amazing football player, probably one of the most technically gifted, aesthetically beautiful players that we've seen in a long, long time. He has an issue defending. I felt at times this year there was an improvement, but yesterday was just an absolute horror show. Now, is that because his head has been turned? Is that because there is a bid been placed? Is that because he's upset that he wants to go to Real Madrid? He wants to go now in January? We don't know. But in fairness, the guy's been brilliant this year. His numbers and in an attacking sense have been off the charts again. And he has been pretty decent. Liverpool are top of the Champions League group. They're top of the Premier League. He's had a bad game. So I think he's earned the right, or earned the get out of jail free card, to be honest with you. It was a poor performance from him. It still drew 2-2. And the club will obviously make a decision now, because we're not in the inside of what happened. Invariably you could say hypothetically that a bid went in a couple of days before the game. He said he wants to go. Club said you're not going, so his head's all over the place. That explains the performance that he had. Or you could say there might have been an illness in the build up to it. There might have been an injury of some description. But I think that yesterday was uncharacteristically poor of him. I'm not saying he's an amazing defender, absolutely not, and he does get caught out, but the level that he sunk to yesterday was uncharacteristic. And even for the Martinez goal, when the ball goes wide to Bruno Fernandes, there is no energy to get out and close down. He actually stops, and then Bruno trots inside, and then Bruno runs by Trent. If you watch that goal back again before he reverses it, I mean, that was in the same ballpark as the Rashford closing down clips that we used to see. Yeah. Where he's just like, please pass it, I don't want to have to close you down. Please pass it, I don't want to have to close you down. Please, he's not passing it. And then the ball gets slipped in, and it's like, oh no. So, that was, if you rewatch that clip, it is horrific. I mean the lack of effort, because when that ball first goes wide to Bruno, he needs to get out there quick and get his head down, stop the cross or force him backwards, but he doesn't. So it remains to be seen. But what I will say is he's been so good for Liverpool. He's been so good for the Premier League. He's been so good to watch. I think he deserves a pass on yesterday, and we'll see how he is the next game. In
terms of how the transfer negotiations are progressing or not, we're on the outside, obviously. Would you agree, though, with Carragher's argument that there's no way Real Madrid put this bid in without a thumbs up from the Alexander-Arnold camp?
100%, absolutely, yeah. There is back channeling when it comes to this stuff. There is intermediaries that speak to each other. So if the two parties, they are speaking directly, but if they can't, or they feel like there's a risk, then they will be intermediaries.
And what's the logic of like a measly 20 million which is going to be refused?
That's Real Madrid being Real Madrid.
But on Alexander-Arnold's part, why would he say, yeah, do that? That'd be a good idea.
No, he wouldn't have said put in a bid of 20 million. They've said, look, we want to get you in January, and he would have said, yeah, absolutely, I want to go. I'd like to go in January. So then the club go, okay, fair enough. We'll just an opening bid. We'll just throw in 20 million, in January. And then obviously, what Real Madrid will say, if you go in and you throw your toys out your pram and you create an uproar, now all of a sudden Liverpool will have to, you could argue that performance against Manchester United was that throwing your toys out of the pram.
Well, give them to you for 18.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden Liverpool feel like, well, we have to enter into negotiation now.
Yeah, okay.
And there's an opening bid on the table and a negotiation takes place, and it might settle at 30. But Real Madrid aren't going to come in and offer 50 million for somebody in January. No, listen, what should have happened is Trent just said, look, I'll come to you guys in the summer. You can just leave it be, please, and I'm going to focus on the season with Liverpool. Hopefully win a Champions League with Liverpool, hopefully win a Premier League with Liverpool, and then I'll go in the summer.
Yeah. That's the thing. They're not languishing in 13th here. I mean, they're on the cusp of having an amazing season. Even if Madrid came in with 60 million and Liverpool said, well, we can't really turn this down, I'm not sure if you want to leave a team about to win a second title in 30 odd years.
Well, you could say what you want, and Liverpool fans will disagree with me here, but Real Madrid is Real Madrid. I mean, they're probably the only club in the world that nearly everybody would want to play for, right? It's whatever it is about that white shirt, and he probably feels like that it's time for a new challenge and it's time for him to move on. So it's his decision. Liverpool let the contract situation get to this point, so it's not completely Trent Alexander-Arnold's fault. Liverpool could have dealt with this 18 months ago, like most clubs do. So we're in this situation because of both of them. So look, I'd be desperately sad to see him go out of the Premier League. But look, Real Madrid with Dani Carvajal aging it, they're looking for a right back, and invariably when Real Madrid set their sights on somebody, it ends up happening.
Yeah. We won't get through everything. Speaking of white shirts, let's I just do a stock check on Spurs. You'd probably sooner buy crypto at this stage than Ange stock, I think, is where you are. So Spurs 1, Newcastle 2. Can I mount a defence here before you take this guy apart?
Who, Ange?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go on now, we're going.
Okay, so the injury situation is a genuine crisis, you would have to say. in that he's now missing 4 of his back 5 if you include the goalkeeper. Vicario's out until next month. He's lost Romero and Van de Ven. Doggy now out for 6 weeks. Even Fraser Forster's out. Again, I would. That's not a major argument in his defence, but it's been unbelievably disruptive. And so yesterday they have on Saturday, Austin in goal, Porro, Dragusin, who has to go off because the whole camp are struck down with illness, and so he went off at half time. He was sick. Gray and Spence, Bergval. It's a kind of unrecognisable team against a brilliant, Newcastle with Gomiraj and Tonali and Joe Linton are brilliant at the moment. But the bigger defence is almost, I don't want to say they're unlucky, because I can see you rolling your eyes already. But just the numbers, if you take Spurs after 20 games this season and Spurs after 20 games last season. So goals scored last season after 20 games, 42. This season, 42. Exactly the same number of goals scored. Goals conceded, 29 last year, 30 this year. So effectively, they're not even conceding more goals. It's a mirror of last season. 42 scored, 29-30 conceded, and yet they are 15 points worse off. 15 points worse off. I kind of just think this is a weird period for Ange Postecoglou, and you need to stick by him.
No, look, I actually do like him, and I think, everything you say there is fair. I don't know, I expected so much more from Tottenham this year, and their injury record has been terrible. Illness, it's not been great. So he probably doesn't deserve to be sacked, but I'm still not buying Ange stock, to be honest with you. I'm still just not sure. You looked at what Ruben Amorim did yesterday, played the occasion of going to Anfield, set up his team perfectly. I just don't think Ange ever contemplates doing something differently, and that's not just when the injury record was poor. He brought 3 players off the bench yesterday, considering the injury record was so poor. On Saturday, it was Basuma, Maddison and Son. Yeah. 3 players that weren't in the starting 11, so that was interesting. So those players are obviously out of form or carrying injuries or whatever.
There was an illness in the camp as well, so you just didn't know who was good or not good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Look, it's fair enough. Look, I take your point. All that is very good, and I'm not going to argue it. It's just I'm still on the fence with Ange, to be honest. Every week I watch Spurs, I'm like, oh my God, because you expect so much more from them, or you expect better things, and it just never really comes. Really,
this Gomiraj, Tonali, Joe Linton behind Murphy, Isaac, and Gordon, Newcastle 6 is fairly hot, isn't it?
Oh, incredible. Joe Linton is developed into like somebody that you would just not want to play against. I mean, he is 6'4", absolutely sculpted to perfection, full of energy, full of running, incredibly good technically, dominating midfield. He is just bowling around that midfield like a nightclub doorman, really, just pushing people out of his way, taking things off people. He is in the form of his life. And then you add in the guile. I mean, we used to always say that, you can't play with Guimaraes as a 6, right? But they're so good technically, him and Tonali, they keep the ball so well. And even you look at like Dan Burn playing inside as a 2 in a centre-back pairing, you're like, oh, there's a weak spot there, you could get at him. But you just don't. Their 2 fullbacks are incredible. They don't get enough credit. Hall and Livramento. I mean, the more I watch Hall playing at left back, he is incredible. So good. Like, brilliant defender, 1v1, super attacking, getting forward. Livramento is an absolute machine at right back, up and down as well. And that blend they have in midfield just really seems to be working well. Tonali just as an 8, running around, picking up loose ball, getting on it, technically keeping it. Joe Linton just bulldozing every out of his way. And then the silky skills of Guimaraes in possession. And then you factor in the front 3, like Isak is they'll do well to hold on to him. And if they do end up losing him, it'll be a king's ransom they'll get for him. And probably Newcastle's question now is, if we sell him, do we get 150 million for him? And can we rebuild? Because I know Newcastle are under pressure for financial fair play. And they're probably thinking, well, if we moved him, we might be able to get 2 or 3 players in, and would we be in a better position? That's obviously a question for Newcastle. I'm not sure that's even true, but then the wide players they've got are incredible, and then you factor in the fact that the bench is good as well. So they're in a really good spot at the minute, and Eddie Howe's done an incredible job there. And Newcastle fans probably deserve this moment of that they're having, really, because they have suffered through the Mike Ashley years.
Yeah. Chatting before we came on, You said you caught a bit of Ipswich and Fulham. They drew 2-2 yesterday. Intriguingly, you said, I have some thoughts on Ipswich.
Yeah, I really like what they've done. They came into this division and they spread out, made the pitch big, tried to play the same way that they always play. They started the season reasonably well, got a lot of plaudits, not a lot of results. And then all of a sudden things went bad. But what I have noticed is that he has changed formation to a back five now, and it's very much a counter-attacking team, Ipswich now. And I think Kieran McKenna deserves an awful lot of credit for that, because all of a sudden now he's given his team. Because if you'd have asked me 4 weeks ago, I'd have said, no, the three that came up were going to be three that are going back down. I think Southampton are pretty much done for. Not sure if Leicester can mount a challenge, but I think Ipswich now can. Because he's recognised that the bodies that he has in the building, while they can play their good football, they were just conceding too many goals, too vulnerable, and confidence was going to start taking a hit, and I think it probably was, hence the reason he went to this back five, brought in Wolfenden. They got good legs at wing back stroke full back, and obviously Sammy Smodish on the counter attack, and they have a player made for leading the line on his own in Delap. So he can stand up front on his own, hold it up, can run channels. So I think it's been a smart move by Kieran McKenna, and I've watched a few of their games recently. And the very fact that he's gone to this has given them a chance now. They had the game against Chelsea where they got a good result, and then obviously the game against Fulham as well, where they would argue they could have won that there. But I think if they stick to this principle of low block defending in numbers, being hard to break down, and then using the pace and the legs that they have on the counter-attack, I think they've got a fighting chance now. It's
quite interesting to get there's actually a theme that almost runs through a lot of the conversations we're having this season, whereby the league is populated with certain zealots, almost like Ange Postecoglou and Russell Martin, who stick to their principles regardless of evidence in front of face, regardless of opposition, regardless of circumstances. This is just what we do. And then, like on a sliding scale, Amorim not a million miles away from them, but then at Anfield yesterday showed a certain pragmatism to meet the occasion, right the way down to something like Kieran McKenna's done here, which is recognise the situation, recognise it's not working. Let's move to a back five. Let's be pragmatic and be professional almost in a kind of realistic sense. I sense from you, the guy who's been around the game a long time, you're looking at the zealots and you're looking at the more pragmatic types, and you're with the pragmatic types. Like, let's be sensible here.
I'm with the types that work with what they have, and you can't make wine out of water. If you have water and you like Postecoglou was struggling at the minute, young kids in the team, not a squad, but he's sticking to his principles. And Ruben Amorim, up until the Liverpool game yesterday, I would have stuck in that bracket as well. This 3-4-3 clearly wasn't working. They're getting absolutely hockeyed by the likes of Bournemouth because, they just don't have the players to play that system. That's why I'm interested watching Manchester United going forward. I think that, the die was cast insofar as the way they went to Liverpool. They were never going to open up like they did against Newcastle. They were never going to play that same way of, the wide players high and wide, wing backs high and wide, and leaving, Martinez in a 1v1 with Salah in a 30 or 40 by 40 area. I mean, that was never going to happen, because even the likes of Bournemouth, Wolves, they all tortured Manchester United. So Amorim spoke like those zealots that you're talking about, that no, this is the system is the system, we're doing it, it's that's it. And I think that's why I'm going to be really interested to see the Southampton game and the Brighton game. Does he set up the same way he did against Anfield and said, look, it is what it is, it's kind of a slight change on the 3-4-3, but it's not how I want to play, but it's how I'm going to play to get us to the end of the season, and then we're going to make the changes. Or does he go back to saying, no, I'm doing it my way, like he did in all the other games? So that's what's interesting moving forward. But it's the likes of Ange and Russell Martin, and there's a few others there as well that just have their identity and they refuse to change it. I don't buy into that, to be honest. I can't, I just don't see that. I mean, it's just cutting off your nose to spite your face, or whatever you might say it. It's just not, it's not a thing that I would advocate. That's why I got a lot of respect for Kieran McKenna for recognising and going down the road that he went. Probably not how he wants to coach or how he wants to be, but he's realised what he has and the best way to stay in the division. Whereas a lot of teams have come up to the Premier League and just said, well, if we get relegated, we're relegated, but we're sticking true to what we do.
Okay. Before you go, you covered Man City, West Ham on the TV at the weekend. 4-1 win for City. Haaland scored twice. Savinho with a goal. and deflected off Kufal. Set up both of Haaland's, had scored as well against Leicester and had an assist against Leicester. I didn't see this in full. He was obviously impressive. Haaland scoring again. On the highlights, West Ham still seemed to have their fair share of moments and chances.
Till that goal went in, West Ham were not only in the game, they were dominating the game. They had a hatful of chances. That Man City living very, very ropey again, giving up loads of chances. But that one deflected goal goes in, and Manchester City all of a sudden now look a different team. But I mean, even Pep's interview afterwards, he was asked, "Are you happier?" And it was just a blank no with no follow up. It was like, we had no control of that game. It was miles away from what I want, and it was. But they do look like they're getting up ahead of steam again. They still got huge problems in midfield. I mean, Kovacic was atrocious in the game. I mean, just looked like he couldn't run. So I'm not sure what's happened to him in the last 6 months really, but I mean, watch the highlight of that game, him trying to run back. Oh my goodness, really struggling to run back. But they have got the likes of Savinho, who was impressive, really impressive again. Foden looked like he was getting somewhere near his best. Haaland kept putting themselves in positions. Now they still have Diaz to come back, John Stones to come back. But, as soon as Kyle Walker came on the pitch again, all of a sudden West Ham started having joy down that side. Even the goal they scored came from Kyle Walker. Really lack of pace, couldn't get back in. I won't say lack of pace, that's unfair. But, took a really interesting starting position and couldn't get back in to stop the cross. So there's signs of life for Man City, and I do think they will end up getting in the top 4 this year, but a serious rebuild needed there.
Yeah. The reporting, by the way, in the papers today is that West Ham have inquired about Evan Ferguson. Jared Bowen's injured. Michael Antonio obviously is going to be out for some time. Brighton want to be sure of Danny Welbeck's fitness. There's also, uncertainty over Lopetegui. We spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, and you explained brilliantly why a move of some sort would be good for Ferguson. So I don't want to ask you that again. But would West Ham jump out to you as decent fit for him?
Oh yeah, absolutely. West Ham would be as good as you could expect, a mid-table Premier League team where he's going to play, because they don't have any attackers. Jared Bowen, Mikel Antonio, not sure about Fulkrug, he played on the weekend. I'd be surprised if he was at West Ham next year. I know he's had his injury problem, so maybe I'm being a bit unfortunate, but that really strikes me as one of, he came in, did one season, and he'll be loaned back to Germany at some point, because he doesn't really look like he can cut it in terms of mobility, what West Ham are looking for. So I think if he went to West Ham, Evan Ferguson, he would play. And I think that he would get lots of minutes, lots of starts, and get an opportunity to score some goals. I think there was something along the lines of a loan with an obligation to buy, which would obviously be triggered if certain conditions were met, i.e. performance related, if you scored goals or starts or whatever it might be. But I suppose Brighton might be slow to do that, because if Evan Ferguson goes there and scores lots of goals, they might want him back, But I think it's in everybody's interest now. Evan Ferguson sitting in the bench or playing the 23s for Brighton is not what he needs right now. And I think, a club like West Ham, where there'd be a serious amount of pressure every week playing at that stadium, would be good for him. And you'd find out an awful lot about himself between now and the end of the season. So if that deal can happen, it'll be amazing for him and amazing for Ireland as well.
Damien, brilliant. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks, pal.